wasting money on cures. Forgot how to fix myself. They say that time is free. Then why is it so precious? Oh, I'll say memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. Time is running out. Time is running out. Lately I've lost my track. I've sailed the deeper seas, hoping to find something to bring back better times. Oh, I'll say memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. But time is running out. 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 Time is running. Time is running out. But time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over. They can't be over now. Time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over now. Time is running out. Time is running out. Time is running out.
Okay, good morning. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another week of live revision here on the Economics channel, YouTube channel. We've got 5 topics, a range of topics: unemployment, aggregate supply, monopsony, nationalisation. Lots of different topics to look at this week. I hope your revision's going well. Welcome to those of you joining us live for this session. Feel free to press like if it's useful and subscribe so you can contribute to the chat window. And if you're watching on replay, then you can download the presentation and just press that pause button anytime you like. Okay, let's make a start. We're looking at unemployment today, but we start off with a big reveal. Shout out, by the way, to Ian Hawke, who's one of our great supporters. Good morning to Ian. Here we go. So which economy is the following? This government has a government debt to GDP ratio of over 100%. UK a little bit below that, 98%. So this is a high debt country. Pardon me. Noah says China. It's close, Noah, in the sense it's a country. Number 2, their unemployment rate is low. It's officially below 2% of the labour force, although not many people believe the figure. So what have we got? Jamie thinks it's Japan, and Siani thinks it's Sri Lanka. Quite a few people saying it's Japan. Well, it isn't Japan. The HGI ranking is 40 places higher than their GNI per capita ranking. So if you based HGI purely on income per head, this country would be 40 places lower. But in fact, when you include education and healthcare, they are 40 places higher. A couple of people thinking Singapore, Toby thinking maybe Argentina. And again, neither of those are correct. Am I going to get through and win today's contest? Their inflation is now facing their economy is now facing an inflation crisis. Jack thinks it's Cambodia, Ellen thinks it's Bhutan, The Snap Bandit has plumped for Nepal. We don't yet have the right answer. Pardon me. Here we go. Last question. Their country has been under a US trade embargo for the past 60 years. Great to see Elliot was up to the grade booster on Thursday. It was great to see you. And Sudo has the right answer. The first person to come in. It is indeed Cuba. Fascinating country. Yeah, the right answer is Cuba. Hey, that was really good. So I managed to get to clue 5. Ben comes in with Cuba. Quite a few coming in now with Cuba, a country that's had to adjust to that trade embargo for the best part of half a century. Okay, here we go. Let's look at unemployment. I've got a couple of bubble quiz questions for you. Again, take a moment to post the answer in the chat window. As of April 2024, which of these UK regions has a lower unemployment than the Northeast? So if you take the regions of the UK, which of those regions? Northern Ireland, the Southeast, London, Southwest. Which of those regions have lower unemployment than the Northeast? A little bit of regional question. Thank you for coming on Thursday, Toby. Really appreciate it. What do we think here? So Toby thinks D, Jamie thinks D, Hayden and Jack think D. Sudo's gone for A, B, C. Which of these regions have lower unemployment than the Northeast of the UK? Stefan says all of them. He thinks all of them. He thinks it's suggesting that the Northeast has one of the highest rates of unemployment in the UK. By the way, I am a man of the Northeast. I was up in Durham yesterday. Love that part of the world. What have we got here? Cal987 says B, C, D. Toby says D. What do we think? This is quite an interesting question. And Milena thinks B, C, D. Well, here's the answer. The answer is only 2. Northern Ireland and the Southwest. Here's something for the exams, everybody. If you get a question on regional unemployment, the Northeast has lower unemployment than the UK average, as you can see here, and lower unemployment than the Southeast and London. Now, this is quite interesting. When I gave a talk the other week down in a school at the Southeast, there was a shock, a frisson of amazement as that stat hit the screen. Thanks for watching the lesson by Elliot. Yeah, the Northeast has lower unemployment, 0.6%, percentage points lower. Now, thinking, wait a minute, that goes against the grain. That's slightly counterintuitive. Of course, the evidence is that unemployment is lower because it's, well, economic inactivity is higher. Take a look at the next data. Now, I think this is super important this year. Unemployment and inactivity. EdXL fans, inactivity is undoubtedly on the spec. Super important. Look at the difference there between the Northeast and the Southeast. Northeast has 3.6% unemployment, but 27% inactivity. That's people of working age who are not active in the labour market. Whereas the Southeast, 4% unemployment, but inactivity is 8.5 percentage points lower. So that suggests that employment is higher. So in other words, there is a major inactivity problem across the UK, about 21%, but in particular in regions such as Northern Ireland and the Northeast. I was reading this morning that in Northern Ireland, 1/5 of the working age population is officially classified as disabled, which is a staggering statistic and clearly has huge implications for the Northern Ireland economy and for welfare systems. There we go. Interesting stuff, isn't it? Question number 2. Which of these countries has lower unemployment than the UK as of April 2024? So I'm using here the latest data published by Trading Economics, and they draw their data from official sources. Which of these countries do we think has lower unemployment than the UK? And the 4 countries I've chosen are Mexico, South Korea, Ireland, and Cambodia. So Milena thinks B, Toby thinks A, Ben says B. What have we got here? Snack Bandit, welcome to one of our great contributors in 2024. He thinks B and C. Archer agrees. Jack and Joel have both gone for B. What do we think? Noah's gone for C. Here's the answer. The answer is, in fact, coming up on the screen. It's only, well, all of them other than Ireland. So Mexico, South Korea, Cambodia. Cambodia officially has unemployment of less than 1%. But of course, we know in a country like Cambodia, there's a lot of informal employment. Ireland actually has higher unemployment than the UK. Here's the data coming up on the chart for you. So this is April 2024, UK 4.2%. I've left the UK out of the data chart there. But I think one for your revision notes, if you get a question on unemployment, if you want to show a nice bit of international context, look at that. South Africa officially has 33.5% unemployment. There's an enormous gap. These are mainly G20 countries. South Africa, 33.5%. Youth unemployment in South Africa is over 50%. So they're staggeringly high. Turkey, Argentina, Brazil, countries with relatively high unemployment compared to the UK. China has higher unemployment, 5%. Germany, a bit lower. And obviously countries like Mexico, Japan and South Korea, quite a bit lower. Now, don't worry, you have to learn this data for the exam, but it's useful context in case you get a question. Okay, let's crack on then. So I want to get some answers from you. Before we do that, here's a quick look at the UK economy. Thank you for suggesting an economist there, Kane. I'm happy to ignore that. So as we go into the exam, LFS unemployment is 4.2%. Inactivity, 22.2%. I think that's a key number. 9.5 million people. There are just under 1 million job vacancies in the economy, and just over 250,000 people who've been unemployed for at least a year. That is the definition of long-term unemployment. And something we'll probably talk about in this session, 12% of young people aged 16 to 24 are not in employment, not in education, not in training. They are NEETs. Snap Bandit says, keep in mind that unemployment is reported differently everywhere. Here in Singapore, the official unemployment rate is 1.9%. But even if you work just 2 hours a week, you're considered employed. Thank you for that. Come back to that question, Josh. We'll leave it on the screen. Of course, Singapore will adhere to the labour force survey measurements which the International Labour Office published. So I suspect there are methodological differences to the Snap Bandit's point there, but they wouldn't be significant in terms of international rankings. Josh says, what's the difference between unemployment and inactivity? So unemployment are people of working age who don't have a job but actively looking for work, whereas inactivity are people of working age who don't have a job who are not actively looking for work. They are the economically inactive population. And G9 very helpfully gives us a nice definition there. Okay, there's some facts on the UK if you want a bit of data for paper 2 or paper 3. I've got 5 multiple choice questions for you. Here's the first one. A pandemic encourages many workers in developed countries to work from home, leading to a closure of city centre businesses such as coffee shops and retailers. Bit of such as seasoning. If this way of working continues after the pandemic, what is the most likely result? And you have the 4 options there for you. And that's a little question. This was a 2023 question referring to the pandemic. What do we think? Post an answer in the chat window. Let's see if you can get the right answer. JT is coming with an answer, and Sky. Both saying C. Jamie, a few people saying B. Interesting. Full-time students don't count as, if they have a job, they're economically active, but if they don't look for work, they are inactive. Yeah, and the Snap Bandit talking about the quality of employment as super important. Well, here's the answer coming up. Most people have got the right answer. It is indeed C. If there's a structural change in employment, oftentimes that leads to a structural increase in unemployment, particularly in things like hospitality. People who live and breathe for working in nightclubs and things. Question number 2. Yes, we're like this. We're going to mention Keynes twice today. Which statement will be associated with Keynesian economic theory? So here we go. This is a 2023 question. Some nice questions coming up in the new exams now about schools of thought. Which statement do you think would be associated with Keynesian economic theory as opposed to other theories? And Toby and G9 have come in with answers, and Sky and Ben, I think you seem to have a good appreciation of Keynesian economics. Here's the answer coming up. It is indeed total spending affects real output and employment. Yeah, it's a Keynesian idea. Good stuff. B, it's not really Keynesian theory. The Phillips curve isn't necessarily a Keynesian theory. In many ways, the natural rate of unemployment is a concept associated with neoliberal economics rather than Keynesian economics. Believe me, please, I'm a Keynesian economist and I've studied it extensively at a well-known university. Question number 3. What is the least likely consequence of a big significant increase in unemployment during a recession? Nice question here. Consequences or effects of significant rise in unemployment during a recession. What's the least likely consequence? My own question. Okay, read it properly. What's the least likely consequence? And yeah, some answers coming through. A few people saying D. No, high unemployment will dampen growth. That is likely to cause a fall in growth. But Freya and Harrison and Jack have got the right answer. It is a fall in spending on welfare. Of course, if unemployment goes up, transfer payment spending goes up. Government spends more on things like universal credit. Question number 4. Some workers in a low pay. Oh, I like this question. Here we go. Some workers in a low paid job decide to work longer hours to increase their disposable incomes. However, this decision reduces state provided benefits, leaving them worse off. What does this describe? Now you have 4 traps there. Workers in a low paid job, they're in work, they decide to work longer hours, but they end up being worse off. Which of those traps is best described there? And answers are flying in. Here it is. You got the right answer, I think. It is indeed the poverty trap. Poverty trap affects those people in work. And a really key point to add to your notes is that despite low unemployment, relative poverty, working poverty, has gone up in the UK. Hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people actually in work. They have a job, but they're still below the relative poverty line of 60% of median income. And my final multiple choice question, we're doing really well today. Unemployment in an economy increases. What is a probable consequence? What's the probable consequence of an increase in unemployment? What do we think here? I'm following the chat window here as the answers come through. A lot of answers coming through which are saying D. And here is the correct answer. Correct. High unemployment leads to a cyclical rise in the budget deficit. Of course, if it's long-term unemployment, it can lead to a structural rise in the budget deficit. Superb stuff. Well done. Okay, so key things ahead of the exam. Paper 2, really, but it could be paper 3. So do revise the different causes of unemployment, obviously. Understand the difference between unemployment and inactivity. I think we covered that in this session. We know that in most countries, the true scale of unemployment, Snap Bandit talked about Singapore there, superb application. True scale of unemployment is higher than official data shows. There's always some hidden unemployment. Now, a point I always make to students is when you get a question on unemployment, you get a headline figure for the economy, let's say the UK or the United States or whatever it is, South Africa. Always consider what lies beneath the surface. Regional variations, how long people are out of work for. So long-term unemployment. And critically, big variations, often persistent, deep-rooted, chronic variations by age, by gender, by ethnicity, by education background. And crucially, with unemployment, you will need a mix of policies, as we're going to talk about in the next 10 minutes. You'll need a big mix of policies to get employment up and unemployment down. It's not something that's multi-causal, therefore it requires a range of policy initiatives. It's a great topic to revise, isn't it? Let's move on. Thinking about the data, here's the chart for the UK. I've shown this chart in Isaac says, what's everyone's favourite type of unemployment? Wouldn't necessarily use the word favourite, Isaac, but good point, well made. Here's the chart I've shown in Grey Booster. The trend is downwards, obviously, but keep in mind that's the UK average rate of unemployment across the UK. And of course, it didn't rise as much during the pandemic because of the multi-billion-pound furlough scheme. The next slide shows how long people are unemployed for. And the key point is that the majority of people who are unemployed for up to 6 months. As you know, there's always some frictional unemployment. There's always some churn in the labour market. People moving between jobs, entering the labour market, returning to the jobs market. But the grey line is the really key one. It went up significantly in the aftermath of the last global financial crisis. It's the long-term unemployment rate. People have been out of work for at least a year. Of course, the longer you're out of work, the harder it is to get back into work. And I think I've got one more. Oh, no, here we go. Oh, yeah, over to you on this one. Here's the team. The moment for the team has arrived. Can you please give me 2 causes of structural unemployment in a country of your choice? Have a go. The more specific you can be, the better. So let's see what we can come up with, and we'll pick out some answers on the screen. Bit of Austrian economics there from Hammy. So we're looking for specific causes, and Sky's got a lovely link there between the changing dynamics of comparative advantage and structural employment changes. That's a really good link. Well done. Yeah, Snap Bandit talks about competitiveness of domestic versus international producers. And Toby has a nice bit of such as seasoning, talking about long-term decline in industries such as the coal mining industry have meant a layoff of workers. Really good stuff. As soon as you use such as, everybody, don't forget, you get more likely to get those application marks. Hayden, the closing of the mines in the north, causing occupational immobility. Well, just a few months back, I went to the Miners Museum at Woodhorn in Northumberland. It's a remarkable museum. If you ever get a chance, go up and see the Miners Museum. It's a remarkable free museum. Really good stuff. We'll talk about over-specialization and lots of good points here. Hannah talking about increased use of automation and AI. Of course, very topical at the moment. Let's look at my two answers just to add value to what you've contributed. Yeah, key things: occupational immobility. Structural employment often is a result of patterns of employment changing. So people who might have been highly specialized and highly skilled in one industry, heavy manufacturing, coal mining, textiles, engineering, or other industries, but they lose their jobs because of change in the pattern of employment. People perhaps at risk of structural employment from automation, from robotics, from AI. What are some good answers coming in about steel industry coming under threat? If you think about the Port Talbot steel complex in South Wales, those workers are highly skilled, but probably occupationally immobile. G9 talking about the shift of employment from manufacturing and farming towards services. Now, the other point I think is super important. Can I spend a second on it? Often people remain structurally unemployed because of the disincentive effects of the tax and welfare system. So they might have a very high rate of marginal tax rates. You know, if they take a job, they might earn £200 but lose, let's say, either 80 in tax. They might lose 40 in benefits. They might have to pay for travel to work costs, cost of childcare. Effectively, people who take a job, if they take a job, they face a very high effective marginal tax rate, and that's known as the unemployment trap. Okay, good stuff, really good stuff. Thinking about policies, I just thought I'd ask a couple of questions on schools of thought. Have a go at this one. I call it the 60-second comment. Outline a Keynesian policy approach. So outline a Keynesian policy approach to increasing employment. Have a go. So this is a great topic where you can bring in different schools of thought into your answer. What can you come up with here? Outline a Keynesian policy approach to increasing employment. And what do you know about Keynesian economics? DRG is unleashing his or her inner Keynesian economics. So we're looking for something that is very specifically Keynesian. Okay, very specifically Keynesian. Jack's answer is interesting, but it wouldn't score anything in the exam. Some good answers coming through on the chat, though. Yeah, Victor has the Keynesian spirit there. Yeah, really important. Again, this is an area, we're going to look at the application spin in just a second. This is an area where the more specific you can be, the better, because then you can start to calibrate and discuss the effectiveness of different policies. Okay. Lots of good answers coming through, particularly I thought Ben's answer on government spending on education, Carl talking about investment in the economy, new schools, and lots of you now talk about the multiplier effect, or even things like tax cuts on people on low incomes. That's a Keynesian idea, because of course if you give a tax cut to people with a higher propensity to consume, you're likely to be a bigger boost to demand, than a tax cut across the board, if you like. So some great stuff coming in there. Thank you, Daniel. Cal987 has some good stuff there because you bring the multiplier in, as I think I do, actually. Here's my answer. Increasing deficit-funded government spending, so fiscal deficits on infrastructure projects, new roads, new bridges, new schools, new hospitals, etc. Not only is there an employment effect in construction, a boost to aggregate demand, but also you might get positive multiplier effects. One person's income is somebody else's, one person's spending is somebody else's income, and accelerator effects. So the construction sector might increase their capital spending as a result, and other sectors. So Keynesian economics tends to focus on the role of government, targeted government spending and targeted tax cuts, particularly for people on low incomes and funded by deficits. Now, in contrast, thank you, Isaac, some great answers from the group there, tremendous answers. Let's have another go. Unleash, please, your free market spirit and outline a free market neoliberal policy approach to increasing employment. Have a go. So what we're doing here is saying, right, okay, let's take a topic. Policies to increase employment. Different schools of thought is a brilliant way to get great evaluation marks in the exam. So we're looking for a free market neoliberal approach to driving up the employment rate in the country. So Rupert, they're hinting at reforms to minimum wage. Ellen talking about removal of unions. Slightly dramatic, I think, but still. So JT talking about income tax changes, which is good. That's a market-based approach. We're getting some good answers coming through. There's always a little bit of a lag, isn't there? So it's always worth looking at the chat window, those of us with us live. So people talking about cutting minimum wages, cutting benefits. My instinct, by the way, my strong instinct is not to say that in an exam. It's kind of level 2, really. It's not. You need to be a little bit more specific. So some good stuff there. Deregulation from Noah. Now Noah's on fire there. Higher employment by reducing barriers to entry, allowing more businesses to enter the market and compete. And of course, when they enter the market, they often invest. Shreya talking about relaxing fire and hire policies, easier mobility between workplaces. This is more down, I think, the more credible, authentic and successful free market approach. So just saying reducing welfare payments and reducing migration barriers is a bit passé, in my opinion. This is a complex topic. Here's my answer, just briefly. I went a little bit like Shreya, talking about encouraging flexible labour markets. So reforming labour laws to make it easier and cheaper, presumably, for employers to adjust their workforce based on market demands. A good example would be to continue to allow 0-hour contracts, encourage flexible working. Okay, so interestingly, here's some data actually on the UK. Everybody talking about 0 hours contracts. Looking at the data for last year, for 2023, over 4.4 million people had a flexi time contract. Some people have annualized hours, some people have term time working, which is quite interesting. So obviously people want a flexible contract where they can work during term time, but have to take time off for look after children during the holidays. 1.1 million people have 0 hours contracts, on-call working, condensed hours, and job shares. Job shares is pretty small, but if you add those numbers together, workforce of about 33 million people, I would say probably the best part of 9 million have some kind of flexible employment contract. Isaac says 0 hour contracts can exploit employees. Correct, Isaac. So the arguments for and against 0 hour contracts, I think, are super worth revising. Labour will ban them, of course, if they get into power. Changing tax rates for firms and workers, is that Keynesian? I think so. If you're changing employment taxes, that's probably a Keynesian policy. If you're changing fundamental employment laws, employment rights, trade union rights, that's essentially a neoliberal approach, deregulation of markets. Good stuff. Okay, well done, everybody. Let's finish off with 3 applications. What I thought I'd do something slightly different today. So we've got the application spinner here. So I'm going to ask you, we don't have a time on this, so we'll wait for the chat window to kick into life. 6 things there. Frictional youth unemployment, long-term unemployment, labour shortages, inactivity. So 6 issues there. And what I'm looking for are an example of, or examples of, government policies to address specific issues. Now, it depends which one the spin. Well, let's press the spinner. I'll just press it now. Spin. Here we go. So let's take an issue. It is youth unemployment. Over to you. I'm looking for specific policies to address youth unemployment. And what I'm suggesting here, we're going to do this 3 times together, because I know in the exam that the best marks, the best grades, the top grades go to students who have something very specific to say. So instead of talking in very generic terms, which I might do in my examples, but the more specific we can be, the better. Can you give me one example, please, of, Ellen's coming with education programs like T-levels. So that is specific. So you're trying to target a particular cause or particular group suffering from unemployment. So Jamie talks about apprenticeship schemes. Benaz talks about subsidies to education. Yeah, Sienna, apprenticeship schemes, more degree apprenticeships, e.g. JP Morgan, PwC. That, Sienna, is application. That is very high level of application. Okay. Now, what we're suggesting here, the more specific we can be, the better. So it could be an industry, it could be an employer, it could be something very, very micro. Yep. So some good stuff coming through. I think I'll talk about apprenticeships, but I think what Sienna's done there is she's made it even more specific, which is great. What else is coming through here? Victor, increased government spending on state schools to increase quality of education. The Snap Bandit talks about removing the minimum wage, perhaps for younger people. Well, I think the UK does have a gradated scheme. It has a lower minimum wage for apprenticeships and 18 to 21-year-olds. Yeah, some good answers coming through here. Yeah, some good stuff. Yes, Vidika talking about subsidising apprenticeships in areas like STEM subjects, where there's where there's a shortage. STEM, of course, stands for sociology, theology, economics, and music. Sure Start scheme. Wow. Okay, so Freya talks about Sure Start scheme, improvement in GCSE results. Now, that is one of those great slow burners, isn't it? Sure Start scheme is now shown to improve GCSE results. Sadly, the Sure Start scheme has largely been cut. Here are my examples. JT says too vague. No, Freya, stick to that is a great answer. So funding for apprenticeships programs, and then to make it more specific, for example, apprenticeships in construction or apprenticeships in whatever it is. Okay. Promotion of digital skills, other vocational programs, and also critically reforms to higher education. So perhaps the government should thinking long term about reforming tuition fees or increasing student grants. When I went to university back in the early 80s, by the way, that was the 1980s, we didn't have tuition fees and we all got a grant. It was a local authority grant and essentially paid for education. Some schools, some countries now do that. They offer a youth employment or an education guarantee. CalCal 987 provides subsidies to employers such as electricians and construction workers to provide more apprenticeships to young people. Get that neat percentage below 12%. That is the sort of answer that makes my heart sing and an examiner tick answers and give them good levels. Let's try one more, shall we? Well, let's try 2 more, actually. So, before we do that, yeah, so this is the neat percentage. There we go. Wow. So the border we're looking at here, the blue line is the key one. That's the overall 16 to 17-year-olds in black. Because more of those are in education, you would hope. But amongst 18 to 24-year-olds, it's up to 15% approximately. It has come down in the last 10 years, but it's still a major problem. It's 3.5 times unemployment in the UK. Let's try 2 more on the application spinner. So let's press that spinner again. Here we go. So we've had youth unemployment. Okay, let's have a quick go at this one. What policies might address labour shortages in construction? Now, this could be a paper 1 question, paper 2, or paper 3. Construction accounts for 6% of GDP. It's a big industry, so it has macroeconomic effects. What could we do to address specific labour shortages in construction? Ideally here, try and think of short-term and long-term policies. What can you do in the immediate period to get more workers into construction? What can you do in the long term to address labour shortages? See, the question says address the issue, which presumably implies reduce the labour shortages. So what can we come up with? I don't think any of the group will end up being a neat, but if you do, there are ways out of it. What have we got here? So okay, so Gene, I'm talking about maybe changing the qualification structure for people working in construction. That's always a danger there, of course. You want retraining schemes, obviously, improve human capital, subsidies to firms to hire more apprentices in construction. Yeah, some good stuff. Lucy talking about lower migration restrictions to allow for increased skills from abroad. We'll definitely talk about that in a second. Jamie talking about better working conditions. Often that is the case, isn't it? People are reluctant to work in what they perceive to be a very physically intensive, often dangerous industry. Noah's bang on the button, as always, one of our great contributors. So short-term, migrant labour, long-term apprenticeships and training schemes. I really like that distinction, though. That's a terrific answer. That's bang on, I think. Lots of answers coming through. Here's my 10 pence worth. Higher skilled worker visa quotas. So that's basically increasing number of work visas and making construction a shortage occupation, which I think it is. Things like tax incentives. You might cut national insurance for construction companies if they take on apprentices, if they take on people for retraining. So national insurance is a tax paid by employees and employers. So you might halve the national insurance rate for companies that take on workers under the apprenticeship scheme. And crucially, I'm thinking very long term here, tax incentives for investment in modern methods of construction. It may well be the case that you need to rethink construction and move away from a labour intensive model towards a more capital intensive model, including things like modular housing. Shreya's got, as always, Shreya has some amazing answers. Subsidised retraining schemes, relax migration rules, increase education, behavioural economics, change attitudes around construction. I mean, the obvious answer for a free market economist is pay people more. And many construction companies are raising salaries. Whether that's enough is a moot point. Just want to show you this chart, amazing chart showing the number of work visas granted in the UK post-Brexit. It was rising, but as you can see, it fell during the pandemic years, you'd expect. There was restriction. Remember, look what's happened to the number of work visas in the UK in 2023. Upwards of 500,000 work visas granted. This is the UK's new migration policy, everybody. That post-Brexit, free movement's gone. In theory, you can control migration. Well, you control using work visas, and the scale and depth of the labour shortages in many industries, from social care to construction to education in particular, and lots of other places, the government has essentially opened the door through work visas. And I don't have a problem with that, by the way, but I just wanted to give you a chart showing the scale of it. One more. Elliot says, wow. It is a wow chart. Don't think there's any doubt about it. One more application spin. Here we go. Policies to address. It'll be one of the other four, obviously, because it's random. And it's, oh yeah, okay. This is my hot topic for this year, everybody. This is my hot topic for the paper 2. Inactivity amongst over 50s. Now, there has been something like a 1 million increase in the number of people who are inactive amongst the over 50s and others, but in particular amongst the over 50s. And it's a major issue. So what can we come up with here? What do we think? My thoughts on Rwanda policy I'm not really suitable for YouTube. Woodnock says, Geoff, do you think this migration will long term be better or worse for the economy? Well, in my opinion, without question, it'll be positive, and migration is pretty much a no-brainer. Skilled migration in particular. I think I've given a shout out to Ian Hawke today. Thank you, Will. Siani comes in. Tax relief on pension contributions for over 50s to early retirement. That is, Siani, thank you for that. That is one of those specific policies that is perfect for A-level economics. It's brilliant. Or more paid into pension by companies. It's interesting whether you try and encourage people to defer retirement or you allow people to retire early with a pension pot and then encourage them back into work. Oftentimes, you ain't going to get the over 50s back into work unless they give them an incentive. Now, Ben, or can we go back to Ben's point? Holly's showcasing shows amazing economics. Spring budget 2023. Jeremy Hunt announced returnerships, which aim to get the economically inactive back to work. Yeah, including things like job MOTs and interviews. One of those media stunts, really, Ben, that, I mean, I think will have little or no impact whatsoever. Okay. Hayden talks about increasing pension plans for firms to incentivise the over 50s to work longer until the state retirement age of 67. Decrease income tax, reduce unemployment benefits. Well, I'm not really sure that will get people into work, quite honestly. Now Rupert's thinking short-term, long-term again, which is great. More investment in healthy living. So in other words, address issues of chronic health problems. Joe Takashina has a great point. Flexible working and carers leave bills. Really, really interesting point, Joe. Incredibly interesting point. Wow, this group is so on it today. Can I show you mine to finish with? So I've gone for reforms to pensions, and that might actually encourage people to retire early and then re-enter the labour market. Policies to encourage flexible working. Midlife job MOTs. I think that's Ben's point about returnerships. I probably fail my... By the way, if you have a midlife MOT when you're 55, does that mean you're going to live to 110? Financial support for caring could be one of the great policies. So we think about trying to encourage more women back into work, things like childcare, tax-free childcare. Trying to get a lot of people leave the labour market in their late 50s, early 60s, to have to care for a relative or one or more relatives. So financial support for caring could be a way of getting them back into work, because you provide a little bit of an incentive. If you find work, you might get a care allowance. And crucially, reskilling. Financial support for reskilling. Shrey talks, perhaps the increased remote working means that over 50s can work despite any health issues. Yeah, so changing the nature of work. So encouraging flexible employment patterns, giving people the skills and the equipment to work remotely from a coffee shop of their choice, or from a garage or man cave of their choice. Yeah, I think there's a lot of love for Shrey's contributions in the live stream today. Have been absolutely outstanding. Superb contributions, as has everybody's. Great contributions. Well done, everybody. Hope you found this session useful on unemployment. Tomorrow, I think we're looking at aggregate supply. So we're going to take a macro focus, short run and long run aggregate supply. So good revision, multiple choice questions, test your knowledge, test your understanding, and then how we use those things in different topics. As always, thanks for joining in. We never take your contributions and being with us for granted. You know the channel we're on 11:30 on YouTube, and of course you can catch up on the live replays when they're published, which will be very soon. So please, can you stay healthy, stay happy, stay curious, and we hope see you sometime soon.